10 reasons why evolution is impossible. This is the rest of the story omitted from my high school biology class, which I feel many people should hear. Reason number 10, the time travel problem. Evolution, proposed by Darwin in 1859, attempted to explain biodiversity on Earth, and by extension, the entire universe and its contents, by aimless, random accidents occurring to matter in nature. Supernatural explanations, like creation by God, are forbidden. However, scientific knowledge is based on reproducible experiments, so-called test tube experiments, which are repeatable in the present. Evolution's explanations are unobservable and unrepeatable guesses about the past, so they are not scientific in the sense of experimental science. Time travel would be required to test evolution scientifically or experimentally. For example, it's impossible to verify evolution's guesses about reptiles evolving into birds without time travel. There are 3 types of evolution. There's cosmological evolution, which supposedly started with the Big Bang and formed galaxies, stars, and planets over 14 billion years. This is nothing created everything evolution. Then there's geological evolution, in which the Earth supposedly formed spontaneously from isolated atoms, shaped and reshaped itself over 4 billion years. This is the Earth just grew, who knew type of evolution. Then there's biological evolution, initially addressed by Darwin, in which non-living chemicals evolved into biochemicals, which evolved into single-celled life, which evolved into many-celled life, which evolved into invertebrates, and then proceeded to vertebrates, and then evolved into apes, and then evolved into man over millions of years. Keep the millions of years in mind. This is crucial to the operation of evolution. All of this progression from atoms to man supposedly occurred by natural selection, or survival of the fittest. In classic Darwinian evolution, natural selection alone produced this progression. In neo-Darwinian evolution, genetic mutation plus natural selection produced the progression. This is goo became you via the zoo as time flew type of evolution. Reason number 9 why evolution is impossible. The impossibility of the Big Bang. The Big Bang, supposedly 14 billion years ago, breaks many scientific laws. Nothing suddenly became something, exploding, expanding matter. The problem is, where is the antimatter? You'd think if matter appeared spontaneously out of nothing, there would also be antimatter accompanying it. And where is the matter for that matter? There's not enough to condense into stars, and its distribution is uneven, it's lumpy in the universe. Astrophysicists are still searching for so-called dark matter in the universe. Then there's the problem of Newton's first law. An object in linear motion stays in linear motion, barring any outside force. Exploding matter should not go from linear explosion to spinning motion, like we see in galaxies and solar systems. Spinning matter should fly apart by centrifugal force. Then there's the problem of Boyle's law. Gravity alone is not strong enough to compress gaseous matter. Otherwise, the air in your living room should condense into stars and planets. Reason number 8 why evolution is impossible. There's much evidence for a young Earth as opposed to the 4 billion year old Earth of evolution. Supposedly, Earth's fossil-containing surface layers are the result of 4 billion years of slow erosion and sedimentation, with the oldest layers bottommost. But the Mount St. Helens eruption in 1980 produced 25 feet of sediment in just one day. Animal fossils are the result of sudden burial by sediment plus huge amounts of pressure. If they were buried slowly, scavengers would pick them clean. This points more toward a flood than gradual sedimentation. More young Earth evidence includes vertical tree fossils, which should have decomposed quickly but can span millions of years in horizontal sediment layers. Then there's the problem of radioactive isotope dating of fossils and sediment layers, which can be based on numerous flawed assumptions, including flawed assumptions about the starting ratio of isotopes, about whether or not their decay rate is constant, about whether or not the system is closed, in other words, allowing addition of origin or daughter products, and flawed assumptions in which bad dates are simply ignored by scientists who don't like the dates. One example is carbon-14 in living things which have died and become fossilized. As the hourglass demonstrates, carbon-14 decays over 5,700 years into nitrogen-14, so that after 5,700 years, half of carbon-14 is gone in a fossil. But carbon-14 should, by this reasoning, be all gone by 50,000 years, or 9 half-lives, but has been found in dinosaur bones, which are supposedly 65 to 250 million years old. That's a problem. Reason number 7 why evolution is impossible: the impossible origin of organic chemicals. In 1953, the Miller-Urey experiment was performed in an attempt to explain the origin of organic chemicals from inorganic chemicals. A so-called primitive atmosphere plus water plus lightning was created in this experiment. The experiment produced 6 amino acids highlighted in blue in the table on the far right. These are the building blocks of protein. But something is missing in the experiment. There's no oxygen, which has always been present in the Earth's atmosphere and which would have quickly destroyed the amino acids, as well as caused a violent detonation, since hydrogen plus oxygen plus a spark produces a detonation. Reason number 6 why evolution is impossible: the impossibility of DNA. The DNA molecule on the left is the software of life. It guides the synthesis and operation of protein, as well as sugars, fats, etc., the hardware of life. These biochemicals are so complex that their 3D structure was only discovered in the 1950s. The systems which make DNA and proteins are even more complex. No lab can synthesize them from scratch. They must be extracted from the living cells that made them. This chart is just a portion of a chart available from the Roche Corporation, which can be downloaded. The chart is so huge it takes a while to download, and this is just a portion of it. It shows all the steps involved in synthesis of various biochemicals. Remember, all of this came about by accident according to evolution. The impossibility of DNA continued. This is the old version of how DNA is transcribed to protein from my old high school textbook. DNA in the upper left-hand corner is really a sentence composed of many letters. Call them A, G, C, and T, strung together in a long chain of beads to form a sentence. This is translated into messenger RNA, which is then translated using transfer RNA and ribosomal RNA into a string of amino acids known as a protein. The impossibility of DNA continued. This is the new version, which is so complicated that it boggles the mind. We have enhancers, promoters, translation start areas, transcription start areas, exons, introns, translation stop areas, transcription stop areas, This is translated into pre-messenger RNA, which is then further modified by removal of the introns into mature RNA before it can even be translated into protein. Remember, all of this arose by accident according to evolution. The impossibility of DNA continued. Genes are huge sentences composed of DNA letters. Imagine a huge DNA sentence that still makes sense even if you start reading it in multiple positions and in reverse order like a palindrome, and if you jump to another sentence, and if you leave out some words. That sure is one heck of a sentence. And there are about 25,000 such sentences in your DNA. Your DNA stores 215 petabytes of information per gram, or about 46 million DVDs of information per gram. It's over 3 million times denser than solid-state drive storage at 69 gigabytes per gram. The impossibility of DNA continued. Chicken and egg problems. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? DNA is fragile and requires constant repair. How could the repair mechanisms, which have to be coded by DNA, evolve at the same time as DNA? DNA can't be translated without DNA translation products and DNA editing products. So which came first? The enzyme that makes histidine, an amino acid, contains histidine. How could that evolve? The impossibility of DNA continued. The simplest form of life has 500,000 DNA letters. But anything over 84 letters in the right order represents a chance of 1 in 4 raised to the 84th power, or 1 in 3.74 times 10 to the 50th. Any chance smaller than 1 in 10 to the 50th is impossible by any definition of impossibility, even when infinite time is allowed for that one chance to occur. Therefore, the complexity of DNA is way beyond anything possible by accident. Remember, evolution operates only by accident, not by design. And here's another problem. Random mutations and natural selection can't improve this incredibly complex DNA. That's like expecting an explosion in a printing press to produce a dictionary. Mutations are either neutral or harmful, not beneficial. Massive mutation-inducing radiation was not beneficial at Hiroshima or Chernobyl. Even non-random mutation, like animal breeding, weakens the resulting organism. One example is Dalmatian dogs, which suffer from deafness and kidney stones. There's poor Fido flunking his hearing test. DNA mutation means loss of useful information, not gain of some new capability or new information. Reason number 5, evolution is impossible. The impossibility of life from non-life. The first living cell, like the simplest bacteria, shown here on the right, had to have, all of a sudden, the parts to separate it from the non-living environment, gather food, process food, eliminate waste, reproduce, and repair damage, etc. Reason number 4, the second law of thermodynamics, which states that everything is getting less organized and decaying. Disorder or entropy is constantly increasing. The second law of thermodynamics requires that all things gradually and ultimately decay, as seen from the arrow going from the upper left to the lower right, starting with the Big Bang and going down to the Big Freeze. But evolutionary theory requires an upward arrow, seen going from the bottom left to the upper right, which is scientifically impossible. So we have particles forming chemicals, forming organisms, and forming people. Otherwise known as decreasing entropy, which is impossible according to the second law of thermodynamics. The entropy problem continued. Couldn't the sun's energy fuel the increased order and complexity required for evolution and counteract the relentless decay of entropy downward? No, this is the open system fallacy. You can't unscramble an egg with added energy. You can only incinerate it. To put it another way, it takes months to build a house, but only a few hours plus gasoline plus a match to destroy it. The only way to increase order and complexity is to add energy which is intelligently controlled and directed. Uh-oh, we're getting close to thinking of God here. Reason number 3 that evolution is impossible: the impossibility of microbes evolving into man. Evolution from microbes to man requires a massive increase in genetic information, starting, for example, with a little bacteria that you see here, going to jellyfish, to amphibians, to reptiles, to monkeys, to cavemen, to humans. There are 500,000 DNA letters in the simplest life forms, but 3 billion DNA letters in human DNA, an increase of 6,000 to 1. Natural selection explains survival of the fittest, not arrival of the fittest, by massive increases in DNA information. The second law of thermodynamics, operating over millions of years demanded by evolution, should produce the opposite result: extinction or devolution of mankind into non-living chemicals. Reason number 3 evolution is impossible: the species barrier. There shouldn't be any species at all if all this evolving is constantly going on. There should be an infinite number of intermediate forms between every species, but there are not, because natural selection only makes changes within species broadly defined. A frog turning instantaneously into a prince is a fairy tale, but if you add a few million years, then it's evolutionary science. One example of the species barrier problem is how to get from reptiles to birds. There are no conclusive missing links or transitional forms anywhere in the fossil record, just a huge number of extinct species, which sounds sort of like that second law of thermodynamics, doesn't it? The famous example of Archaeopteryx is an extinct bird, not a feathered dinosaur or feathered reptile. Birds are radically different from reptiles. They're streamlined. They have centralized weight with no heavy tail. They have hollow bones which aid in breathing and make them much lighter so they can fly instead of solid bones like a reptile. They have powerful flight muscles. They have sharper vision. And they have feathers. Here's another species barrier problem: how to get from reptiles to mammals to humans. Mammals are radically different from reptiles in many ways. Furthermore, human intelligence is far beyond survival needs. Why would evolution favor anything more intelligent than an ape? The brain might not look impressive, but it is often described as the most complex arrangement of matter in the known universe. If humans are unchanged over millions of years according to evolution, why only 4,000 years of recorded history? The earliest written history from Egypt only goes back to 1600 BC. Why did writing appear so recently if humans have been around for millions of years? Reason number 2 for the impossibility of evolution: Famous evolution frauds. There's the fraud of Piltdown Man, the so-called missing link, originated by Charles Dawson, shown in this picture. There's a picture of Darwin behind him looking on approvingly. These gentlemen are looking at a supposed example of Piltdown Man. The problem is this was a forgery which fooled experts and was in textbooks for 40 years. It consisted of a human skull as well as an ape jaw and filed down chimp teeth. Another famous evolution fraud, Haeckel's embryo drawings, not photos. The picture on the left appears or did appear in many biology textbooks as an example of evolution. Haeckel fraudulently drew the pictures in the top row to reinforce the idea that while in the womb human beings and other creatures undergo a throwback to an alleged evolutionary ancestry. It's been known to be wrong for over 100 years, yet similar pictures still adorn biology textbooks today. Photographs of the actual embryos in the bottom row bear little resemblance. Oops. Famous evolution frauds continued. The fake evolution sequences. Many alleged evolutionary sequences, such as the whale, horse, and human, are based on scarce fragmentary remains. These fragments are open to wildly different interpretations, especially in the case of human evolution. So-called human ancestors are just extinct apes. The horse sequence is an exemplary fairy tale. It consists of one non-horse and many extinct types of true horse, seen on the right. Even the fine print from rabidly pro-evolution Wikipedia admits this. It says this image shows a representative sequence, but should not be construed to represent a straight-line evolution of the horse. More famous evolution frauds. The whale sequence, from land mammals to aquatic mammals. Consider the massive changes that had to occur supposedly over about 40 million years. And look at the sequence on the right. Pakicetus is highlighted. Cetus, does this look like a whale? The changes included eyes, designed for underwater refraction and pressure, blubber for insulation, a blowhole in its musculature atop the head, special nipples for underwater nursing of the young, ability to drink seawater, radical skin changes with no hair or sweat glands, ears designed for underwater sound, including a forehead melon with specially arranged fat to focus sound waves for echolocation, such as seen in beluga whales. No, whales were completely aquatic from their first appearance in fossils. Transitional forms leading to whales are a myth. Reason number 1, the most important reason, is revelation, when God reveals truth beyond human thinking or reasoning. My favorite example comes from Whittaker Chambers in his book Witness from 1952. When Chambers' wife got pregnant, he was joyful but still thought she should have an abortion. She said we could not do that awful thing to a little baby. It was through this child that he found God in this way. My daughter was in her high chair. I was watching her eat. She was the most miraculous thing that had ever happened in my life. My eyes came to rest on the delicate convolutions of her ear, those intricate, perfect ears. The thought passed through my mind, no, those ears were not created by any chance coming together of atoms in nature, otherwise known as evolution. They could have been created only by immense design, otherwise known as God. The thought was involuntary and unwanted. I crowded it out of my mind, but I never wholly forgot it or the occasion. I had to crowd it out of my mind. If I had completed it, I should have had to say, "Design presupposes God." I did not then know that, at that moment, the finger of God was first laid upon my forehead. What's the bottom line? Evolution is a fake branch of biology, just as medieval alchemy, transmuting lead into gold, was a fake branch of chemistry. The debate between evolution and the biblical alternative, creation in 6 days by God, is really a dispute between two incompatible belief systems, or religions if you will, which reach different interpretations of the same data. Neither belief system can be proved scientifically. That's the time travel problem. Evolutionists are religious fundamentalists. They cannot allow God's foot in the door. A third option, theistic evolution or God-guided evolution, is an unbiblical compromise. It's not compatible with Genesis 1 through 11. You can't have it both ways. I believe in science, and I believe that the Bible's account of creation in 6 regular 24-hour days is more compatible with known science than evolution is. You can take your choice. The pro-evolution idea is that the classroom must and will become an arena of conflict between the old and the new, the rotting corpse of Christianity, together with all its adjacent evils and misery, and the new faith, or religion, of humanism. I choose the anti-evolution view. It makes no sense for rational man to argue for the irrational, aimless appearance of all life, otherwise known as evolution, including humans. I see no reason for believing that one accident, man, should be able to give a correct account of all the other accidents, i.e. life on Earth, as C.S. Lewis has said. Here is a bibliography for further reading.